right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Kalamazoo Venture Tuesday. Everyone, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking, but do feel free to leave your camera on so we can see your smiling faces. For those of you who maybe have never joined us before, Kalamazoo Venture Tuesday is an opportunity to see inside the minds of investors as they provide feedback to our company presenters. The purpose of KVT is not to secure an immediate investment, but rather it's a teaching opportunity for participating companies and for members of the audience. Each of our quarterly meetings features a panel of 3 active investors. You'll meet our 3 today in just a moment, as well as 3 startup or early stage companies. Each presenter will have 10 minutes to pitch, followed by 10 minutes of feedback from the investor panel. We will not take questions from the audience. However, you may ask questions or make comments in the chat, which is located in the little conversation bubble that's at the top bar of your screen. So I think I'd like to get started first by introducing our esteemed panel of investors. And right at the top of my list, I have Diane Durance from Michigan Capital Network. So Diane, would you like to unmute yourself and say hello?
Yes, thank you for inviting me to participate in this. This is the first time I've become aware of this program. I am with Michigan Capital Network, where I'm the executive vice president, and I'm mostly in charge of our angel groups that are around the state in building the groups and helping them identify companies that might be available to present to them. So we have Grand Angels, Kazoo Angels, Flint Angels, Woodward Angels in Detroit, and Blue Water Angels up in mid-Michigan. Prior to doing this, I'm pretty new to Michigan Capital Network. I returned to Michigan in August. Before that, for 5 years, I was the director of the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. And before that, I spent 11 years in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Michigan as president of the Ann Arbor IT Zone, then president of Great Lakes Entrepreneurs Quest. So thank you for inviting me today. I'm excited to hear about the companies.
Great, thank you. Next on my list, I see that Doug has joined us. Hi, Doug. He's with Dow Venture Capital. Would you want to go ahead and say hello and introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm here with my colleague Liz as well from Dow. It's good to see Diane again. It's been a long time. So some things never die. Entrepreneurism still is strong in the state of Michigan. And this is also my first visit to this group. So I'm happy to be here. I direct what's called in Dow our Ventures and Business Development Group. We have 3 arms. We have a licensing arm. We have a formal corporate venture capital arm. And for better lack of a term, we manage Dow's corporate business accelerator. So we can work with startups in multiple ways, both in terms of deal structure, along with even for strategic opportunities, provide guidance and mentorship for companies that we deem interesting and meet our investment thesis. And for Dow, that investment thesis, surprising to no one, should be materials and materials process development. We do some advanced digital manufacturing technologies. We've invested in drone companies, for example, that investigate the inside of tanks, rail cars. We've invested, in all kinds of material-based startups. My goal at being a Michigan-based company, Dow Chemical, located in Midland, Michigan, is to always find materials deals. So, one of the things we're always looking for when I run into my friends down in Detroit, it's like, well, what deals have you done in Michigan lately? I said, please bring me a materials deal worth investing in. So, and that won't change today. We do quite a number of deals. I can't tell you, we do a lot of deals in Michigan. I also support and sit on the MTRAC review panel that covers the materials innovations through the major universities in Michigan. So I see early stage deal flow there as well. But we always are looking for those kind of deals within Michigan. We think it's still a great environment for materials there. And we work in those areas. So Dow's funnel is broad, but there's usually has to be some, materials development, some kind of knowledge that becomes strategic to our investment. And we'll do early stage deal to late stage deals if it meets our strategic criteria. So I hope that helps today. Like I said, either myself or some of my colleagues, cover the Michigan area as part of the Midwest region. And so we usually show up at these things in person or, as in the last 2 years, a virtual presence. So happy to be here and learn more about this group.
Great, thank you. We are really grateful to have your expertise here. We have a wide range of expertise being presented by our panel today. Our last panelist, last but not least, we have Simon Burton with us from 1894 Capital. So Simon, can you unmute and say hello?
Actually, it is last and least, but okay. Given the August company I'm in, and actually, in interest of full disclosure, I'm now very recently ex of 1894 Capital. I've just taken a new role. In fact, over the last week, so it's very similar. So I'll sort of address the sort of strategic push of both funds together, because they're being run quite similarly. So I ran 1894 Capital for about 6.5 years. It's Kellogg Company's venture capital fund. And the intention was twofold with the fund: one, to drive financial return, and secondly, to get a strategic benefit. In that order, but not with one being more important than the other, if that makes any sense. We had to leap the financial hurdle first, or we didn't do the deal. But we also wouldn't do a deal that was financially attractive if there was no strategic benefit. And that then led us off into a number of different areas. We said initially when we launched that it was going to focus on Kellogg's categories, adjacent categories, and emerging technologies. If you think about that for a second, it's almost anything you can think of. So the idea was to keep the umbrella very wide. I used to jokingly say, and it was only half a joke, that I'd rather see something and not do it than not see it, which means that you're doing more work. But I think it is probably wise to cast a wide net like that. Again, like Doug, we went, well, we ended up like Doug, whether he went into it like we did or not, I don't know. We ended up investing across the sort of the spectrum, from very early stage deals to later stage deals. I learned pretty quickly it was more about the strategic fit than it was about being overly pedantic about deal size and structure and all of that. So we were, I think, very flexible on the deal structure side. And the model was to help the companies that we invested in. I loved it because I cared about financial returns, so I could tap 32,000 employees to help me get better returns. I'd do that all day long. And the company loved it because it gave specialist employees exposure to something that they wouldn't normally get, right? Which is the entrepreneurial spirit, maybe, for want of a better way to put it. I had a couple of different roles at Kellogg prior to starting the fund. And before I went to Kellogg, I was an institutional investor, most recently at Norges Bank, based in London. If you don't know, Norges Bank is the sovereign wealth fund for Norway. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but they got most of the money from the North Sea oil and gas reserve. So it's about $1 trillion now, I think. And I've worked at other institutional investing places as well. So I'll stop there. But if anybody has any questions, feel free, you can email me. I'm now actually doing something very similar for a company called Griffith Foods, which is a food tech, more food tech ingredient business. So I just started over the last few days, but I think the structure is going to be strikingly similar to the one that we had at 1894.
Awesome, thank you. We have like I said, a really wide range of experiences and expertise with our panel today. So I think we're going to get some really good insight and conversation going. So we do have 3 presenters here. I see Christopher has joined us. So we do have all 3. So it's going to be a great morning. We are going to start with Joshua with Tradion. Am I saying that right, Joshua? I hope so. Tradion.
There we go, unmute. Tradion, yes.
Tradion, okay. And we're going to have Silas with Ambitous Games, and then Christopher will talk to us about Caregivers Insight. So our presenters are going to go in order that I just mentioned. So Joshua will be up first. Remember, everyone, please mute yourself if you are not speaking. And if you do have a question, you can go ahead and pop it in that chat that's in that bubble at the top of your bar. And I'm going to mute myself. Joshua, go ahead and use the share screen to get your slides presented. There we go. Okay, it looks like you're good to go. So I'm going to go on mute, and anytime you're ready to begin, you have 10 minutes.
All right, sounds good. Put that there. Well, thank you so much, guys, for this opportunity. So I'm Josh. I'm the founder and CEO of Tradion. we're bringing together energy storage and EV charging through monthly subscriptions. The rapid adoption of electric vehicles has required consumers to really become critically dependent on an aging power grid. In order to combat this, consumers are increasingly looking at energy storage and different technology to try to help mitigate the risk and the load on the grid. And existing energy products today, energy storage products today, actually require very high upfront costs, ranging anywhere from $15,000 to over $60,000 per system, which unfortunately makes it very cost prohibitive for the broader market. Our solution is to deliver an all-in-one energy storage and EV charging platform that is available through a simple monthly subscription. We call this the Nexus Energy Ecosystem, and essentially it consists of three components. The main component is the battery storage unit. This is the system that actually stores the energy. We're actually engineered around what's known as second life batteries. That is, batteries that were once used in an EV actually have an additional 7 to 15 years of effective life in them. If you guys remember on my wall behind me, I actually have 2 Tesla Model S battery packs that we're using in our prototype to do testing and validation with. By doing this, we believe we can gain more value out of our natural resources. It is important to note that while we are engineered around second life batteries, we also are very much battery technology agnostic, meaning that we are going to work with other technologies as they come about. So we're not pigeonholing ourselves to one type of technology or one source, but we want to make sure we utilize our resources the best as possible. In addition to energy storage, we also have EV charging. Our chargers is level 2 EV charger, which is twice as fast as a level 1 charger, and these are all integrated together. The entire system then is managed through a energy manager, which essentially gives the consumer the ability to control what happens to the energy within their house. So energy is stored inside the system off the grid or off ancillary storage devices or energy devices such as generators, solar, wind, things of that nature. That sort of energy then can be used to offset the load to the grid by powering up parts of the house or even charging the car as well. We're also in preliminary conversations with some of the local utilities where the energy could even be redistributed back into the grid to help improve and reduce the overall risk to the infrastructure. Why now? The rapid growth of electric vehicles is kind of hard to underestimate or understate today. There are over 20 to 50 million EVs projected to be in the market by 2030, with 10 to 25 million EV chargers required to support that load. 80% of all EV charging actually is going to be done within the house. And in addition to that, the energy storage market in the residential space is actually grown by over 300% year over year. Again, overall, consumers are changing how they engage with energy, and this is being driven mostly in part by the EV evolution. Other factors that are driving this push is that we've also found that 93% of all homes with solar actually do not have energy storage. Grid failure is increasing by over 50%, and power utilities are continually looking for ways to offload excess energy off the grid and be able to use that energy at a later point. Based on that, we see our initial market focus is first-time EV owners that are looking to add energy storage. Based on market data and market research, we have found that our service and attainable market size is worth about $150 million by 2027. I am very fortunate to be supported by a great team of founders and advisors. So I myself have over 15 years experience in bringing new technology and technology-centric services to market across North America, so building that supply chain and that distribution channel. Our CTO's got over 20 years experience in IT infrastructure development on a global level and is currently the architect of our core software, which allows all of our systems to be able to communicate up into the cloud. Our CMO's got 10 years experience in branding and marketing, very much consumer centric and working heavily in the automotive OEM retail space. And our director of engineering has got over 10 years experience in manufacturing and battery cell manufacturing here locally. Our board of advisors have a diverse background from startup founders, large corporation CEOs, software development, automation, things of that nature. And we also have Arlen Meekoff, former state of Michigan senator, who's been heavily involved in working with us on the policy side and on the state of Michigan side of things. As our business model is hardware as a service, so monthly subscription that includes the installation of the systems and ongoing support for the life of the platform, reducing the headache and the hassle that the consumers currently have to deal with. Our business, we go to market through direct business to consumer, but we actually leverage local electrical contractors to be our installation force in the field. They will be our boots on the ground, if you will, to service, install, and manage each installation. And we're working already with some national electrical contracting firms that allow us to have access to their network of contractors to allow us to get into market and build a channel very, very quickly. As stated before, our initial market focus is first-time EV owners. However, we recognize there's much greater opportunities beyond that. Secondary market focus is existing EV owners, as well as the existing homes with solar already installed, with vast majority of those not having any kind of energy storage in place. And then beyond that, we're looking at future markets in things such as off-grid energy storage, off-grid EV charging. We've actually had some high-level conversations with the state of Michigan and with Alaska about off-grid EV charging in more of the rural and remote areas. Data products to build machine learning and predictive modeling and things of that nature, as well as exploring energy as a service model. Again, those are kind of long-term visions of ours, but there's definitely opportunities in that space. As far as competitive landscape, obviously, anytime we start talking about EVs, we have to mention Tesla. Tesla definitely has the largest market share when it comes to home energy or home energy storage. However, it's important to note that their platform requires you have to install solar and doesn't come integrated with EV charging. Additionally, their platform is very, very expensive. I had my house quoted here in Grand Haven, Michigan, and the price for me to have their system installed was over $60,000. So typically the Tesla platform is very expensive and designed for those who have the ability to afford that. So our very unique position is that, again, we're engineered around second life batteries. Our product is available as a monthly subscription, so the consumer doesn't have to deal with the cost, the hassle of managing the installation. And our installation, I said, is included as well. So essentially our big value proposition is we simplify the process of energy management and energy storage and EV charging within the home. As far as the financials, obviously we're an early stage startup, so these are just guesses and assumptions based on market data. The big thing to know is how we did our pricing model. Our base product is priced at about $160 a month, which is less than what the average household spends a month on fuel. From there, we built out our model and we built out our unit projections based on current data. But per unit, we estimate that each unit will have a lifetime of about 10 years, which is pretty average for existing systems in the market, which would have a return and profit of $15,000 per unit. To put things in perspective, we anticipate having 64,000 units installed by year 5 for us. Tesla just recently installed their 200,000th unit in market. So even from that standpoint, even our projections are very, very conservative based on the data we've been able to gather. As far as key milestones, we are a Delaware C Corp. To date, we have been bootstrapped by myself and the other co-founders. So we have about $100,000 invested. We have a working prototype that we have built that we continue to do tests on and develop off of. We're starting already to do some of the preliminary MVP development off this. We are in the process of pursuing a number of patents. We got 3 right now we're pursuing, with more that we will be going after. And we have several strategic relationships that we are working on with DTE, Consumers Energy, General Motors, just to name a few. Another thing that I don't have on here is the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Michigan is actually coming over to see our lab, which is in my garage here at the end of February. So we're excited about the attention and the investment the state of Michigan has put into what we're doing already. And then finally, what we need, we're raising $1 million. We have a post-money valuation of about $5 million based on third-party input, and that money is going to be used to complete the MVP and to put the MVP through testing. So UL, FCC testing, validation, things of that order, as well as then to start our pre-order marketing campaign and develop our sales channel to push into the market within 12 months. With that, any questions?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we go on now to the panel feedback portion of our program. Remember, panelists, we want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly. Our goal here is to be honest, but to be kind. We're here to build up our presenters and help them make better presentations in the future. So we're going to call first, ladies first. Diane, I'm going to let you lead off and give insights, thoughts, ask questions. Go ahead and take it away.
Okay. Josh, I loved your presentation. I really like what you're trying to do and making this available to homeowners at a reasonable price. I think of it like cable TV, where you're paying your monthly subscription for your internet and cable. You're not paying the full cost of what it takes to install a household and all of that. So I really like that. I'm a little fuzzy on where exactly you are in the development of the prototype, how close you are to being able to have first customers and get this out and being tested, because I think that is going to be really important for you in raising additional funding. I have a question about the Second Life batteries. This is the first time I've heard of using these Second Life batteries. So as I understood what you said, they would be batteries that are coming from vehicles. So but yet they have enough life left in them to be used in the charging station. But I'm wondering if the numbers work. Like, are there enough batteries coming out of the EV vehicles to keep pace with what you're looking at in growing the number of stations? Like, will you be able to get them, and will you be able to get them affordably in order to redeploy them? And I had a question about, you were saying that we would see 20 to 50 million EVs by 2030. But you were saying 10 to 25 million chargers. So I'm wondering why we wouldn't need more chargers than we have vehicles, just for the convenience of people and homeowners that have two homes and so forth. They're going to need these in different locations. I was really impressed with your advisors and your team. I was wondering how much of the team is how much time each team member is spending on this, and how fast you expect it to go to market. I have talked to Dr. Gaydon from Inticells, so I know about her technology, and I'm curious to know how that fits with what you're working on. And I really like the aspect about the solar homes, and that people with solar aren't investing in storage, but if they were able to have storage for $160 a month, that seems like that would really be a breakthrough for getting solar homes more effective and usable. I'm thinking about the number of solar homes I've seen in the tropics and the Caribbean and the Virgin Islands and so forth. And if they don't have energy storage, they're really missing an important opportunity to be able to weather the hurricanes and the outages and so forth. So I think that's very exciting. I think you've got the fundamentals in place. You've got a great concept. You've clearly done some market research. Congratulations on getting it this far, and I'm excited to hear more about how you're going to take this to market and move it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to answer those questions, or what? I don't know for time wise, because I have got answers for most of those, I think. So.
Yeah, time-wise, we probably don't have time. But the point of this is to hear, like, what are the questions that they would have to kind of give you an idea of kind of what didn't come through during the presentation, or what they might need to include more in a future one. But because I want to keep moving, next up we have Doug. And Doug, I'd like to hear your thoughts and suggestions and feedback for Joshua.
Yeah, nice thing about Diane going first, I can echo a lot of her comments. I thought the presentation was spot on, and your team looks, experienced, and both in terms of the startup venue. The one question that I had in these kind of models where you're going to provide upfront capital for a service fee, there's usually some kind of secondary underwriter, financer that has deemed this kind of a bankable investment. So as you scale this opportunity, have you, what's the market for these kind of financiers to keep your operations running? And is this really a bankable application for these recharging stations? That's the one gap I didn't see you address, how you're going to fund this long term, because your cash flow is going to be the big issue here going forward. And then the other questions were the same thing. We actually just did a study on reusable batteries. So Liz ran that study, so she may have some additional kind of more techie questions or some other application questions. But for me, I'll just leave it at the one thing that you're missing is the financing piece. How are you going to convince people that in the long term, if you can get the source of these batteries and you can modify different types of batteries for your charging facility, that maybe is what's in your IP, then that would be my biggest question going forward, without reiterating a lot of the stuff that Diane said. But again, well presented, it's pretty clear what you're trying to do. It's the bankability issue that was my biggest question.
Thanks, appreciate that. Good feedback.
And also one other thing, your total cost, you covered your CapEx cost, going forward. But what about if you're not going to use solar panels, which I probably agree with, there's still going to be an operating cost of electricity usage to charge that. Right. So I would not avoid that, just put it right in, and maybe that's already in your total cost to the consumer. But I think that question would just be an open area that someone will ask you about. You probably have an answer, but just go ahead and show what it is. I think everyone realizes it's not going to be free, right? So it's best to err on the side of articulating what that cost might be. Thanks.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Doug. And because we kind of have a 2-for-1 with Dow today, Liz, is there anything that you would like to jump in and question or mention or feedback?
Sure. Great presentation. It was very clear. I think for me, coming more from the technology side, you lay out, how your company is different from all of the other ones, but maybe going a little bit more into like, what is your secret sauce or, your IP that makes you, that enables you to do those things differently would be something to highlight, but otherwise great.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you for jumping in there, Liz. I'm taking advantage. We have 2-for-1. I'm going to take all the help I can get. Simon, we're coming to you. Would you like to tell Joshua some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's been covered, in fairness. I had a couple of reactions. One, I was a little unsure about the source of energy, if it's not solar, and then, you're tapping other unused energy, how that actually makes its way into my house. Partly I'm showing my ignorance, but I was a bit unsure about that part. I think I went partially where both Doug and Liz were going, which was the competitive set. I get the 60 grand, and that's prohibitive from Tesla, but they are, a massive big company. So I'm curious as to sort of how defensible this is and what it's going to take to sort of maintain that defense. And $1 million right now to do the development seems reasonable, but to maintain your defense and get moving quickly against competitors like that, I assume you're going to have to raise a lot more relatively quickly. So that would actually be kind of an interesting discussion to have too. I will say as an editorial comment, I mean, like everybody else, I see hundreds of these. And the most frustrating thing is when you get 20 pages into a pitch deck and you still don't know what they're doing. You were there in a page or two, which I loved. It's like, yeah, tell me exactly what this thing is, and then explain to me why I should love it, rather than keeping the suspense going for 10 or 15 minutes. So I think you obviously worked on your pitch, and I think that was great. So a couple of minor things, I think, but I think it was a great, pretty tight presentation.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate the feedback. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
And we've got about a minute left for our Q&A. So Joshua, was there anything that you wanted to ask the panel? Was there anything about your presentation you were wondering about? Anything you want to ask them?
No, it's actually very helpful. Getting it going from 25 slides down to 12 and then a couple of sentences has probably been the most arduous problem. Building this thing was easy in comparison to building a PowerPoint. I think I spent more hours on that than I did this, but that's good feedback to know that we're on the right track on that side, because I know that's a big deal to raise capital. So I really appreciate the feedback a lot on that.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. So we are getting ready to move on to our second presenter. Next, we have Silas from Ambitous Games. So everyone remember, put yourself on mute if you're not speaking. And Silas, you can go ahead and pull up your slides.
All right.
And I've got my timer ready.
Share. I should be able to share a tab, right? Yep.
There we go. Okay,
Awesome.
so I'm seeing it on my end, so I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, and you may begin when you are ready.
All right. All right. Hi, everybody. I am Silas, the creative director and one of the co-founders of Ambitious Games. We are an independent game studio based out of Marquette, Michigan. It's a project that me and some of my friends started when we were in college, and very quickly it took off and became something much bigger than a dorm room project. It became something that we wanted to make a company around, so we established Ambitious Games. We started working on a game called Revan, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute. That's kind of our main flagship title for right now, but we do have ambitions of making other titles once we've got this one out the door as sort of our mainstaying product. So the question I want to start off with is, who knows what a MOBA is? If you guys want to raise your hand if you've heard of MOBAs before. They are one of the most popular video game esport genres in the world. The esport scene is absolutely huge for MOBAs. However, they are pretty daunting to new players. They are typically played from a top-down perspective, more of a bird's eye point of camera, while most other popular modern games take a first-person or a third-person camera approach. In every other MOBA on the market right now, players also choose a character from a roster, and then they join a team of 5 players to fight against another team of 5 players. So these are a bunch of things that we are looking to change with our new take on the genre, where we're kind of innovating on what it means to be a MOBA. So Revan is played from a third-person camera perspective with camera and movement controls that are identical to other popular shooter games like Call of Duty, Fortnite, Overwatch, games that have a lot more mainstream appeal in today's market. Players that we've already tested the game with also just love the unique blend of genres in Revan. We have nearly infinite player customization through a loadout system, where instead of choosing a character from a roster, in Revan you are able to build your own character out of all of the abilities in the game. So there's a much more personal connection between the player and their character, and it also offers really just deep opportunities for strategizing within the game and coming up with new ways to play the game that can surprise your opponents. It also just kind of brings players back again and again, which is awesome. Some of the tech stack stuff, we're building Revan in Unreal Engine. We've partnered with another company called Radical Motion, and we're using some of their pretty cutting edge stuff to create our character animations. We've been working with them for about 3.5 years. And what they're able to do is they're able to do character motion, which you see the guys wear the funny suits with the dots on them on the green screen and stuff for all the big movies. With Radical Motion, we're able to do all of that without any sort of fancy, expensive setup. We can do it really cost efficiently with basic cameras in basic environments. And so we've been working with them really closely to help develop their technology, which is in turn helping us make ours. And also all of our backend, our account services, APIs, all of that has been built on AWS. We built everything ourselves rather than using SDKs from, say, Steam, so that it'll be easier to port the game to consoles and other platforms like EGS or GOG. The game has been fully playable for a couple of years now. We focused on making the gameplay first. We wanted to make sure that all the mechanics were solid. And then more recently, we've been focused on polishing the audio and the visual aspects of the game to just make it more appealing to new players. So a little timeline of where we've gone so far. Back in 2018, we spent about 6 months developing an early prototype for Revan. And then in October of 2018, we launched a closed alpha where we started to invite a limited number of players to come in and try the game and give us feedback. In 2019, we started to expand out the core development team from about 3 people to 5 people. And we really focused on refining that core gameplay loop. What does it mean to play this game? What makes it fun? What makes it competitive? And make sure we got all of that nailed down tight. In 2020, we started to lay the foundation for global scalability by building AWS, building out dedicated gameplay servers that we can spin up anywhere in the world through the cloud infrastructure. And we also hosted a small crowdfunding campaign that allowed us to get some of the team to go full time. In 2021, just last year, we raised at the beginning of the year from some local investors, which led to more of us going full time. And we also launched an open beta just a couple of months ago, back in November of 2021. So far, we have about 3,500 users registered and playing the game. And in 2022, we're going to be extending that open beta for about 6 to 12 months to continue gaining feedback from our players, improving the game based on their feedback and all of that, as well as just preparing to launch season 1. Now we're going to get into the business side of things. I'm much more of a product and a game-focused person. Business is something that I did not set out to do. I set out to make a video game, and I set out to build products. But business is another side of the thing that you have to do. So something that surprises me every time I see the numbers is just how absolutely huge the video game market is. I've read that they're, a bigger industry combined than movies and music, which is just baffling to me. There's so much going on in the gaming industry. I think it's going to become, and already has become, like the biggest entertainment industry in the world. There are a bunch of different types of players that we would be looking at as users and customers. In a multiplayer competitive title like ours, you have, of course, competitive players who may or may not have aspirations of joining a pro esports team at some point in their career. These players are always, playing to win. They're some of the most dedicated players in a community. Then you have more social players. They want to play with their friends or just join online groups, and the social experience of the game is what's important to them. And then finally, of course, you also have casual players who maybe they play by themselves a couple hours a week, and they take the game a little bit less seriously. They might love something else about the game rather than the social or the competitive elements, whether it's just the core gameplay loop or maybe the stories and the world that we've built around the game. We want Revan to be approachable to all of these players. Our goal is to create a game that is easy to learn and enjoy, but continually offers new challenges for players who seek to master everything it has to offer. And like I said, back in November, we launched the open beta, which is a Steam early access thing, so that players have started to enjoy the game and give us some valuable feedback, which I've listed a couple of our reviews from them here. We've also had the opportunity to have the game reviewed by a couple of journalists and some content creators on YouTube and Twitch, so I've got a couple of accolades from them as well. From our marketing and sales, Revan is currently distributed on Steam, but we want to be able to distribute it on pretty much any platform in the world. We'd like to bring it to GOG and EGS, which are 2 different distribution platforms on PC. We'd also like it to bring Revan to consoles like the Xbox and PlayStation. Our primary user acquisition is through content creators and influencers on YouTube and Twitch. These are people who have built followings of hundreds or even thousands or millions of people who watch them play games. And when they play Revan, those players are then going to download and play Revan as well. This also lets us tap into existing player communities. If one person comes in and plays, they probably know other people who also watch that same content creator that they will be able to play the game with. So it's a really great way for us to get lots of users at once. And of course, we're also going to be using some online advertising to promote the launch of new seasons of content in the future. A couple of our partners, Radical Motion, I already mentioned them for the character animation tech. Really proud of our relationship with them. We actually just built a new motion capture studio to utilize their technology more fully. So that's going operational this month. That's something we haven't really announced too much publicly yet, but we have a whole new studio to work with them on. We also work with Campfire Coworks, which is a local co-working community here in Marquette, Michigan. So we're able to get office space and some collaborative environments from them, as well as Endless Coffee, which, as we all know, is the most important part of being an entrepreneur. So extremely thankful to them for that. And we're also working with Xsolla, which is a payment processing company that specializes in game payment processing. So when people make purchases in games, a lot of times they're using Xsolla. We've been able to partner with them for our payment processing as well. We are looking for a publishing partner. So this publishing partner relationship would ideally bring in some marketing and distribution expertise that we lack, as well as just giving us reach into new markets, connections to the console manufacturers, and that kind of thing. So let's talk about some of the other MOBAs that have been and are currently on the market. The two biggest MOBAs in the world that you've probably heard of if you have played MOBAs are Dota 2 and League of Legends. They've been around for about a decade. They aren't going anywhere soon, but we offer a completely new take on the genre, so we're not really looking to compete directly with them. We're actually looking at their users as potential users who may join our game while still playing these older games. Both these games are played from a top-down point of view, like I mentioned before, and players select specific characters from a roster. Revan is played from a third-person perspective, and players create their own character via a loadout system. We've shown Revan to a lot of these people who play these games, and they're really excited by the innovations we're making in the genre. Smite is a third-person MOBA, which means the camera angle is similar to Revan, but that's about where the similarities end. Smite still offers a roster of characters instead of full customization, and I also believe that they don't take full advantage of the third-person camera to create very good vertical gameplay and map navigation. It's still played on very flat surfaces in their map environments. Paragon was a third-person MOBA launched in 2016 and shut down in 2018. It was developed by Epic Games, who shifted their development resources to Fortnite when the Battle Royale genre became massively popular. Paragon had more vertical gameplay than any of the other MOBAs to date and grew to around 7 million players in 2017. After it was shut down, there have been a number of spiritual successors like Fault and Predecessor that are currently in development. We're more similar to those games than any of the other games on this slide. However, Paragon and the successor projects all still had a roster of characters, while we have nearly infinite character options. Revan is also a shooter with longer range engagements and a high action gunplay environment that can't be found in any other MOBA. Our team comes from around the world. We focus on being competitive, fast-paced, and community-driven, and focusing on teamwork. We've currently got 7 developers, which are a mixture of part-time and full-time. One of our goals for 2022 is bringing everyone to full-time status, as well as hiring a few new team members. Ideally, we'd like to expand to about 20 developers. We offer both work from home and in-person offices via Campfire Coworkers to our team, along with pretty flexible work hours. Here's a few of our studio pillars. I realize I'm running over on time, so I'm going to skip through this slide, but this is some of the stuff that we believe is really important to us as a team. Our business model is really standard for the MOBA genre. It's free to play. We get as many players playing as possible. Some players will want to purchase premium cosmetics because it's a social game. They want to show off what they bought to their friends. They want to look good in the game. And then as a game as a service, we're going to be constantly releasing new content, whether that's gameplay or cosmetic content, and that continually drives player engagement. This is a few of the things we're working on right now and some of the funding rounds that we'd like to break things down into. We'd like to get the social systems a little bit more beefed up. We'd also like to bring our servers to more regions. Our main expenses are cloud infrastructure and developer salaries. We expect possibly the first year after launch could be a net loss, but as we gain popularity, we expect to see steadily increasing revenue. And I think these projections are pretty modest considering that League of Legends has over 100 million monthly active users, and I did these projections with like year 5 having 3 million monthly active users. We're already in talks with a handful of major publishers who have expressed interest in acquiring the studio once we've established these larger user metrics. So that's kind of our exit opportunity for investors. Right now, we're looking to raise about $600,000 or $700,000 to finish development of season 1, which would take us through the end of this year. And then at that point, we'd be doing a Series A for about $3 million to continue pushing the game's marketing forward. And that is it. And I apologize for running 2 minutes over. But I'll take questions now. Thank you, guys.
Great. Thank you, Silas. Yes, so let's get right into the feedback. Doug, we're going to start with you this time. So go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. You know, what I liked about what you're doing is obviously you're intimately involved with this. So these opportunities that are developed from the ground up, where you've been able to, you know, fund yourself by working through the elements of the product, I don't think anyone would question that. So you guys know your product, you kind of know why it's attractive to users like you. So that's not the part that I'm concerned about. The one thing as you present this for raising money, I think you need to get right to a couple things. What is your revenue model right up front? How do you get paid for what you're doing? Again, because your audience might be investors, not necessarily gamers, that invest in this area. And then the other thing with these is, how does it scale, and really what is your cost to acquire new users on the game, your real cost, because that's usually where the surprise happens, and that the cost of acquisition of these customers to get more and more players, while you'll get many through word of mouth and usage, but just be really clear on how this scales over time. Why does the revenue jump from year to year? How many users does that impact? And what is if it's not a direct revenue stream like subscription, where are these added revenue streams coming from? Just to be clear on what those are. So you leave the person that wants to give you money and know when he's going to get his money back a clearer view of what he's up for. Other than that, though, the product, the company, how you're setting up, how you bootstrapped it along the way, I think is really, really positive, and you obviously know what you're doing, and to be able to do this up in Marquette just shows that the world can be attacked from anywhere in the globe these days, and I give you guys a lot of credit for doing that and moving it forward that way. But that was my main concern. How does it really scale? What's the revenue model? And really, what is that cost of acquiring more and more users? How many do you really have to get to be either attractive for an acquisition or to be self-funding as you go forward?
Okay, thanks, Doug.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think next we are jumping to Simon. Why don't you provide some feedback, or Silas?
Yeah, thanks. No, I thought it was really good. I'd echo something that Doug said, which is just where is the revenue stream coming from, and why are those assumptions right? Very often people don't answer the why question, and I think that would be really helpful, especially for somebody like me who's not up to speed with this as maybe as much as some others. One thing I thought would be really useful would be to see it and maybe see what it looks like versus the competition. And then that begs a few questions, which how long till somebody comes at you with something similar to this? How fast do you have to scale to fight that off? What kind of funding is that going to require? I mean, it's a similar sort of thing that we had, with Josh. I think, it's like, how fast do you actually have to do it? What do we have to assume is going to happen? One thing you did touch on too is that you're going to expand, I guess, onto other platforms. It'd be interesting to know what economics of that's going to look like when you get past Steam and go to other places. Mm-hmm. So I think there were a few things that you could touch on. But I agree with Doug that it'd be great to get the financial piece up front and sort of explain how the mechanics are going to work. And I think it'd be great to see the thing. I mean, it sounds great, but I'd love to immerse myself in it for a couple of minutes. So I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Diane, it is over to you.
Okay, great. I continue to be just absolutely amazed at what's going on with the whole gaming world. And every once in a while, I hear a presentation and I'm just astounded to discover how many people are involved, how much money is involved, what's going on in this field. One of the things that sort of piqued my interest was your discussion of doing a crowdfunding campaign. I actually heard a presentation by an expert on marketing games where he had talked about how companies are now using crowdfunding for launching these games in a very formulaic way. And they're able to generate millions of dollars before they even release the game. So you played around a little bit with a crowdfunding campaign. I'd like to know how that worked and whether you're aware of some of the mechanisms and processes some of the other game companies are using to really generate attention for their games. The other thing that concerns me about something like this is sort of like fashion or any kind of art. It's like some things just catch on and some things don't. And it seems to transcend whether it's technically great or whatever. It's just sort of like, it's a fad thing. It's something that people get into, like the whatever that was, the birds thing that everybody was playing a few years ago.
Yeah.
Angry Birds, it's like, who would have guessed, that would become popular. So when I look at you with your game and the effort that you're putting toward it with, a great team, but a small team, and I think about the competition and some of the games that you mentioned, and those companies are huge and have thousands of developers. So as you're bringing this to market next year, those companies are also gearing up to bring more stuff to the market. So I'd like a little more depth in your discussion about the competition and how you're going to be able to get traction in the light of the fact that this is a huge industry now.
Yeah.
I know UNCW, where I was at the university, we have an esports program. And, when that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a real thing. I think the potential is fabulous. I think that you've obviously made it a long way. You've got great technology, a great game system that you're coming up with. I think there's just that element of risk on whether it really gets adopted and it goes like wildfire, or it's just sort of another game that you're battling in the market with social media, trying to get people using it and growing it. But I really like what you're doing, and I would love to hear more, because I think it's something that most investors don't see, that there's this industry out there that's so huge. And I first became aware of it because my son was a gamer from his teenage years. He's now 25 and has his own company and doesn't do that quite so much. But it is amazing. And I congratulate you for getting as far as you have with this on your own Steam. And I would love to just hear more on how you're really navigating the competitive environment in such an active, fast growth industry.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually really, really good feedback. I do have answers for all those things, but I know that's not really the point. But I did take notes on all that. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciated that.
Thank you. And just because, Liz, you were kind enough to come along and let Doug wrangle you into this, would you like to provide any feedback on this one?
Sure. Yeah, so I agree. I think from the investor perspective, even looking at market size. So you talked about the overall video game industry, but what percentage of that is MOBA, for someone who's not familiar with that. And yeah, show us a bit more, I would say. So you talk about your partnership with graphics and character development. What do those look like? And that could be, just grab some interest right at the beginning of your talk. But yeah, you have a lot of passion, and that shows. And I think it was impressive, the amount of work you've done.
Great. Thank you, panelists. Just to finish up, Silas, were there any questions you wanted to ask the panel? Anything in particular you were looking to hear about that they didn't talk about?
So I guess the one thing that I, coming into this, was really curious about was something you guys already brought up, which was showing the game itself. In previous pitches that I've put together, I typically start with, here's what we're making, and then here's like 2 minutes of montaged collected footage of the game that I show while I talk about it. And going into this pitch, I assumed that you guys would be more interested in the financials, which then I kind of misstepped on my timing and wasn't able to spend as much time talking about the financials as I had planned for. So I guess I'd just be looking for general feedback on the balancing act of talking about what the product is and why I think it's so great versus like talking about revenue and long-term scaling and competition and all of that. Like how much time and how many slides and what do you want to see in your first pitch? Because obviously, we can have follow-up conversations with an investor if they're interested, but to get their initial interest, what is more engaging to you? Is it seeing product, or is it seeing financials?
Who wants to take a stab at that one?
I can tell you what I say. I show me what it is. Grab me first. Like I say, last thing I want. I mean, you just throw a pitch away, right? If it comes to you blind and you don't understand in the first few slides what it is, you just throw it away and move on. So for me, it'd be show me what it is first, but then explain to me, why this is different and how you're going to get what you want to get out of it financially. I wouldn't drag too far into the detail. You can do the details later of the games and everything, but grab attention first and then explain to me why you're doing something different. That'd be my take.
Yeah, I just jump on saying the rule of thumb is what's, be really clear about what's the problem you're solving, and then, how much are people willing to pay for that? So that applies to any venture. So, and I think for you, it's this nuance about, third person and some of the, so I think you covered it, but be really clear of how big a problem that is and why people are pining to get it, not just like, is this a vitamin? This has got to be an aspirin that solves that problem to get people to switch.
I'm actually really surprised that I didn't think about putting side by side like screenshot comparisons. One of you mentioned that, and that's like the highlighted thing in my notes, because like I said, I've shown the game before in my pitch, but I've never actually shown, here's our game, here's what the competition's games looks like, and this is why ours is the next generation of what that looks like. So yeah, thank you guys very much.
Great, thank you. Okay, we are moving on. Great conversations today. Christopher, you are next, so you can be preparing, putting up your slides, getting those ready to go. I will remind everyone, remember, stay on mute if you're joining us, and if you have questions for either Josh or Silas, you are able to put them in the chat. So, and maybe at the end, Christopher, we might, once we're done, I'm not sure how much they'll be in the chat, because we end up pretty quickly, but if anyone in the audience did have a question for Josh or Silas, you may put that in the chat, and if they're able to jump in and provide an answer, they will. Christopher, are you able to put your slides up?
Yeah, can everyone see that? Can you see that?
There it goes. Now I don't see it's not your presentation though.
Okay.
Try unshare and then choose it. It's like we're seeing your screen.
Oh, you are? Okay, here, let me try that again here. Whoops.
And believe it or not, everyone, we all practiced it. All of our presenters, we
Is that better or the same?
I'm still seeing like it's your actual screen of like the Teams meeting. When you click share, it's going to ask you what you want to share, and you should be able to choose the PowerPoint.
I tried doing that, and here, let's do that again here.
So we really did do this once, and it really did work.
I did do that.
Yeah, we really did.
Nope, you can't see that, can you?
Not
There
yet.
We go. Oops.
Nope.
Okay. Let me, I'll try this one more time.
Try one more, and then if we need to, you can always send it to me very quickly. You can email it to me, and I should be able to pull it up.
Any luck there?
For some reason, we are still just seeing it's the Teams meeting screen that we're seeing. I'm seeing myself.
Okay, let me try one more time. And maybe if I turn this off here and try it this way here. Any luck there?
Still see me. Can you email it to me very quickly? Is that something that you could do in a hot second?
Yep. I'll do that. Bear with me here.
My apologies, everyone. We'll
I
get
do apologize. I thought I had this going just fine, but apparently not.
take a moment, everyone. Go get that refill of coffee, right?
Yes, please take a quick break, whatever you need to do, and all right, it is over to you.
Okay, just waiting for it to arrive.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for your patience.
Just waiting for it to arrive. It's still not here. Here it is. Got it. Okay, open. And okay, let me share my screen. Is everybody seeing it?
I can see it.
Yep.
Okay, then this is all I see. So Christopher, when you are ready, you may begin and then just tell me next slide when you need me to advance.
Sure, sounds good. Good morning. Thanks everyone for your patience on that technical technology glitch. I am Christopher Jew, co-founder of Caregivers Insight. I'd like to start by asking the question, if you have a loved one who lives some distance away, how are they doing? This is a meaningful and difficult question, especially if that loved one is older and or are living with a medical condition. We are focused on family caregivers who provide support to clients and loved ones. Our application simply and thoroughly answers that question. How's your loved one doing? Go to the next slide. Caregivers Insight was inspired by my father. Over 10 years ago, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia. He lived in Fresno and I'm in Midland, Michigan. So we had to FaceTime and have Google Hangouts to see how he was doing. He also had caregivers who were with him who would, Sandra, if you could press a button and we might see the next, there we go. Who would notate and document his changing health condition using these forms during their shift. And these forms were stored in binders that sat on the kitchen counter, which weren't helpful to me 2,400 miles away, nor did it answer the question, how's he doing? But his fourth hospitalization due to dehydration in less than 2 years was the turning point for my family, my sisters, and everyone, because dehydration and being hospitalized was preventable if everyone in the caregiving circle knew that he was on that trend. So this had to stop, and so I created an app to track a number of different issues that my father faced. And when we implemented this application on a number of occasions, everyone, including me, from 2,400 miles away, could see that he was on the path to dehydration before lunchtime. And everyone was able to take action and provide the appropriate care so that he could avoid another unnecessary visit to the hospital. Next slide. Practically every caregiver, every caregiving agency, every living facility uses this form. And Sandra, if you could press the button again, you'll see these other two forms, a version of these summaries. However, they have a number of blind spots. Number one, they are very inconsistent, and the information that they actually collect isn't relevant to the ongoing care. So much happens over a caregiver's shift that they either can't remember or don't know what to document. Because of the manual process, they are poorly maintained and are rarely referenced by caregivers. And when they are forced to or required to fill them out, they just consider it more as busy work. They're difficult to share remotely, and you don't have to be from Midland to know that. But more importantly, you can't really ascertain any sort of trends from this. And if you can't see trends from these forms, you're only receiving reactive and blind care. Next slide. Our mobile app solves this and a number of different issues that families face with menu-driven health, physical, mental, and care questions with pre-selected answers based on one's diagnosis. There's no typing, there's no texting. You just choose the objective answers that represents what the caregiver can see. And then if you can press the button again, the answers are then transformed into trend lines. You can press it again, as well as, and again, trend lines that are time and date stamped relative to important baselines. If you could press again, that can be shared with family, doctors, nurses, everyone involved in the circle of care. The insights provide so much information. It's so easy to understand and accessible to so many. It truly leapfrogs yesteryear's pen and paper, the antiquated solution that we are replacing. Go to the next slide. The caregiving market, it's huge and will continue to grow for the foreseeable future. It mirrors the growth of the aging baby boom generation. Today, there are over 40 million caregivers providing support to those 50 years and older. And in less than 8 years, every single baby boomer, that is 70 million of them, will be over the age of 65 years old. And with the growing trend of aging in place with these baby boomers, the demand for caregivers will continue to grow in a similar fashion. Next slide. If you go to the next one, let's go to the next one. I think I might have, yeah, there are digital applications in the marketplace, but they are more focused on the Medicare reimbursement through medication management, prescription refilling, remote patient monitoring, and care coordination. They focus on utilizing billing codes to receive their reimbursement. And in regard to care coordination, that's a very separate but very competitive area. They're more focused on making sure that someone's going to come and take care of a loved one at a particular time and also communicating. But when it comes to answering the question of how's a loved one doing and recognizing early on potential health and care issues before requiring medical intervention or attention, we truly stand alone. If you go to the next slide. And our revenue model reflects that major differentiation. We are a simple monthly subscription fee of less than $10 per month. It'll range between $5.99 and $9.99 per month. Now, Sandra, I'm gonna have you go back a couple of slides so you can take a look at our go-to-market strategy. To reach the 40+ million caregivers, we are deploying a multi-pronged approach to reach what appears to be a very fragmented market. We have identified efficient channels to reach thousands of caregivers at a time through a B2B to C approach. First, we are targeting caregiving support and resource organizations, such as Valley Caregivers Resource Center, that directly supports 14,000 caregivers every single day in a market of 180,000 in the Central California region that we already have a relationship. We're also working with AARP, which is has the largest percentage of caregivers in the United States. Secondly, we're also working with independent residential care facilities, not your very large national ones which have hundreds of units, but really the smaller ones, because they don't have the resources to provide a good assessment of what's going on inside with their clients or with their residents. But it also is going to improve their workflow, their sustainability, and provide better ongoing care. And then finally, our third prong would be the home health care agencies. Those organizations that are really trying to help those who are aging in place, aging at home, where minimizing the hospitalizations and unnecessary doctor visits are very, very important to them, to their sustainability and viability. If you go back now to there we go. So where are we right now? Over the last 6 months, a lot has happened. We received a Business Accelerator grant through the Michigan SBDC through our relationship with CMURC. Towards the end of this fourth quarter of last year, we launched our private beta to over 25 caregivers in a number of different settings, reaching over 100 different clients for feedback on how to improve our and make changes to our app to make it better in preparation for our public launch that will occur in the first quarter, maybe second quarter of this year. We have a development team that's already in place that we hired and are working on the development of it. And we've also begun our fundraising efforts. If you can go to the next slide. And our goal is to raise $750,000. That is going to help us with the public launch of our mobile app, hire key personnel in the areas of marketing so that we can start selling, we'll generate revenue almost immediately once we launch our mobile app due to some of the relationships that I mentioned earlier. But our goal is to reach 20,000 subscriptions. And within 2 years, our goal is to reach operating profitability. Go to the next slide. These are our financials. There is this contemplates by year 2 reaching almost 20,000 users, monthly subscriptions. If you think about it on long term, our by year 5 we will have about almost 3 million users and subscriptions. So those are our financial projections. We can discuss more detail if you have any questions about that. Go to the next slide. For our co-founding team, I'm one of 4. We are all caregivers. We've all cared for a loved one at some point in time. I've been involved in startups for the past 25 years and I've been a EIR, executive in residence for Ann Arbor Spark. Our head of product, Thomas Moore, has been a caregiver for over 7 years, operating and managing a residential care facility. Thomas Perry has over 20 years of front and back end development experience. And our head of sales, Doug Houtman, has over 20 years in sales and marketing experience, and most recently was involved in a med device startup. We go to the next slide. We've had advisors who helped us along the way. Palliative care physician Evan Fonger, a gerontologist, and Lisa Brinkman, and Anthony Sam, a med tech entrepreneur who's had a number of different companies purchased with his oversight. That's it. Next slide. Thank you very much for your time. I'd love to hear your feedback, and sorry for the technical glitch there.
Great. Thank you, Christopher, very much. Simon, we're going to let you lead off this time. So go ahead and provide some feedback.
Yeah, I really like it. This is a great idea. They're all great ideas. This is a great idea. It feels like an area that's been underinvested. If that's the right term. Just a couple of small things. I would start with a solution again. It took 2 or 3 slides to see. I guessed what it was, but I think it'd be useful to have. We're digitizing the provision of the information, and then tell us. I didn't realize about the forms on the counter and all that kind of stuff. So I think that was great info. I think then tell us why why what's out there now is not good. I was struck by the logos on that page that was entitled Key Segments. Presumably those relationships are going to be really important to the growth. It'd be interesting to know where you are on that journey. I clearly that's going to drive your financial results. So it'd be good to know where you are with each of those people, how much volume you think you're going to drive as a result of each of those relationships, and sort of on from there. And if you're actually, you're launching, I guess now or any time, who on that page is actually going to play in there? What's that launch going to look like? That would be one of the things. And then I think a bit of detail on the financials would be great. Like, how are you driving those revenue numbers? we had some numbers for subscribers and what have you, but I think it'd be interesting to see 2022, here's your revenue number, here's how many subscribers, here's what they're paying. Just a little more detail on there. I think it'd help play that all out. And then I'll ask sort of the same question I've asked before, which is this protectable, or is AARP just going to do their own version of this? And, you know, and there'll be some kind of massive competitor out there, which would be, you know, difficult. So I'll leave it there, but those were some of the notes that I took while you were talking. Hopefully it helps with that.
Great.
That's great.
Thank you. Simon. Very nice. Diane, we're going to go to you next.
Great. Thank you, Christopher. This was the second time I've heard your presentation because I was at the Blue Water Angels meeting when you presented in Midland, and I'm actually a Midland native, so I'm always thrilled to meet entrepreneurs that are from my hometown. I had a couple of questions. The things that I sort of remembered you saying maybe in the other presentation that I didn't hear in this one, and that is who is paying for this app? I think I heard you say it was the caregivers, and I'm wondering if they're feeling the pain enough to adopt this, and whether they would have to get sort of their organization that they work for. If they're with a caregiving organization, do they have to get the organization to buy into it, or would they have to fill out the paper forms because that's the process that they have in place, and then they get the app because they're wanting to use it maybe so they don't get so many calls from family members or whatever. So they're but I'm just kind of wondering how it fits with their workflow. And then I'm also wondering about the other apps that are out there that you mentioned, like CareZone and eCare21, that are handling things like the prescription management, the remote monitoring. Are they potentially acquirers of your app to build out what the capabilities of what they have, or will they be competitors in the sense that caregivers might feel, well, I'm already having to use CareZone for the prescriptions, and now I've got the remote monitoring app, and am I also going to have Caregivers Insight app? And even though yours is simple to fill out, is it making, you know, just another step where they have more to do? And in terms of the caregiver using it, I'm assuming that caregivers, it looked like caregivers on average have 2 or 3 patients that they may be providing care to. So they buy the app one time and they can have these multiple patients that are on there. It's a little unclear about that. It's such a great idea, and I know as a person that has had elderly people in my family where we were trying to keep up with how they're doing, I love the simplicity of what you have created. I love the trends. I think that makes it so visual. There's a company that I've worked with called Work Talk that has done the similar thing about kind of managing your workforce, where it's very simple. It just shows trends. Are people getting less happy with their job, more happy with their job, you know, and it just kind of very simple like this shows a trend so that company owners can kind of gauge very quickly how their staff is feeling, how productive they are, and so forth. So I love a lot of aspects of that. It looks like from your charts that the 750,000 will take you to the break-even profitability point, which I hope that's true, because I know raising money is very time-consuming and a difficult process. So I would like to know more information about how you're reaching these groups and getting them on board. If you're primarily going to the, you had the caregiver support organizations, but it seems like this would be a decision at the company level. You did say B2B marketing. So those companies that are providing the home health care support, needing to adopt it and then pay for it so that it's not individual caregivers, and where they can build it into their overall process so that it's part of the array of apps and computer software that everybody needs to learn and use. I'm wondering what your exit strategy is, because, you show going out 5 years, and it seems like if you get this kind of traction and really grow this, that you're just going to be a natural acquisition for some of these companies like eCare 21, or somebody that's kind of building out their array of services that they have through their apps. So I, of course, love it. It's a great service to families. So thank you for taking your situation and using it as a launch pad for helping others. That's really great. So that's kind of the comments I have.
Excellent. Thank you, Diane. Doug, we're going to let you bring it up and bring it home.
Yeah, real quick, full disclosure too, I met Christopher at the CMURC event in Midland, so it's nice to see you again. And like Diane said, this is totally relatable. Anyone who has aging parents, my father suffered with dementia at end of life too, and getting information and then working, trying to keep him in his home is always the key strategy, right? And then alleviating the burden on their spouses or other caregivers is huge. And we saw the same thing. The one thing that, like was mentioned before, I think how these relationship works, I mean, really, the way I view these is what you're providing an eventual acquirer is you're going to build up a customer list, and you're going to get your hard ground level work of your simple tool socialized. And then what do you need to make it attractive to be acquired by these people that can provide you some scale? So just from a financial perspective, if you're trying to get investors, well, I think the problem is definitely one of those worth solving. I think that part is just really powerful that's been mentioned. But again, to take things down to, how they're going to get their money back, when they're going to get their money back, how these relationships work. I remember my experience was through Homestead, right? And so the turnover of the people that come into your house is huge. And so you'll get high school kids literally with no education that will come into your home. Again, not for people on this call who may have the wealth to provide better services, but the general population who those costs are huge and significant, and many times not reimbursed. And so how you segment who really needs to use it, and really what these home care providers view of the product and what they get out of it. So if it's going to be a B2B piece of it, what's their view on this? What are those costs look like in the value chain? Because obviously you're going to have to give some of that value to them, right? Because they're the ones that are going to train and probably get their users to use it. So, but again, I think everything else has been said here. Just so glad people like you are tackling this problem, and hopefully you're starting to see traction now that you've been at some of these events and you're getting good response. Your team looks excellent. For you, it's just going to be a lot of hard running and convincing people to use it. The other problem too, we looked at closed loop systems and other things like medication compliance. We worked with a lot of the e-diary companies in the past, and some of those things. It's an area now that's flush with capital. The digital health area is huge, as you know, but really, finding your turf in this area and finding something that's investable. One thing you've done is you've definitely narrowed it down to a niche. I don't think you're asking for a lot of money. Hopefully that will carry you to really at least fulfill your vision of what you want this to be, to get it into sufficient people's user hands, and then hopefully, provide a partner that can really help you scale it. But, unfortunately, it's not in our area of investment. But also, if you can solve the problem now with a worker actually entering the data in the digital system, that's going to be the next problem, because it's a partial solution. Eventually, hopefully there's some sensor that can be put on a patient that gives you all this information directly right into the place. That's what everybody wants, but getting there is the challenge. So That's all. Those were my comments. Just best of luck to you going on this one.
Thanks, Doug. It's good to see you.
Great, thank
See
you.
too.
Yeah, and Liz, since we gave you a chance to comment on the other two, do you have anything that you wanted to say on this third one?
No, I think in the interest of time, a lot of it's been said, but obviously a great mission, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, as we are wrapping this up, I want to again thank you to all of our presenters today for sharing your really innovative companies with us. Just some fascinating stuff going on. I love doing KVT because I learn so many new things every time. And I would really like to give a big thank you to the investor panel for offering such insightful feedback. Thank you to Liz, who kind of got pressed into service and wasn't expecting it. But hey, I take help wherever I can find it. And Doug was kind enough to bring you, so I was kind enough to jump in there and pick your brain. Lastly, thanks to all of you in the audience for joining us today. I really hope that you can join us again on April 26th for our next Kalamazoo Venture Tuesday meeting. As always, that meeting will feature 3 new companies and 3 new investor panelists. You can register for it and other upcoming events at our website, and I'm going to drop that in the chat.
I think you muted yourself, Sandra.
You're muted.
How did I mute myself? Okay, just to wrap it up, thank you again for everyone. We appreciate your attendance, and we really look forward to you joining us the next time. And have an absolutely fabulous day, everyone.
Thank you, Sandra. This
Thanks,
was
everyone.
great.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kendall.